Welcome to FlamesNation Radio. He's Shane. I'm Ryan, coming to you from vacation because I just can't get enough of Shane in my life or podcasts, really. How you doing, Shane?
I'm good. It's not quite as hot here as it is for you there, but
I made the life decision of going to Southern California during the worst heat wave in 50 years in California. So it's when you wake up, it's 30 degrees and humid, and then it gets hotter. So I mean,
haven't you been trying to go on this trip for like a year or two, like 2 years?
It basically feels how I imagine it would be. Living day to day in a microwave. I don't know how people live in this climate. It's a beautiful place, but they usually get like a month of just unbearable heat a year, and it's near the ocean, so they can handle it. But as always, we're brought to you by DoorDash and by the fine folks at Eau Claire Distillery, the makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames, and as always, brought to you by our friends at Montana's. Shane, this week there's not a lot of news for now.
No, it's pretty quiet.
We're waiting on the Flames to come to some sort of an agreement for the coming season with Adam Ruzicka. He's basically the only last lingering piece of restricted free agency or free agency in general news for the Flames. We know, based on everything we're hearing, the Flames are trying to add a forward of some kind to the group through free agency or other means. Nothing's happened yet, so we sit and wait. So we figured, in the absence of actual news, Shane and I would talk about 3 players apiece that we think that this is going to be a really important training camp for. And because I'm going to start off with Dylan Dube. So Dylan Dube has been in a unique situation for the Flames last couple of years, in the sense that Dylan Dube was drafted the year after the Flames got Mangiapane. And I think the challenge is Mangiapane, once he went pro, simply had a clearer role. Mangiapane came in, they said, Manj, we want you to be a really good fourth line player. And he said, you betcha. And then he was that. And then they said, how about you be a really good third line, second line guy? He said, okay, I'll do that too. And he was that. And they said, hey, okay, you're doing this pretty well. You want to play with Backlund and play against the shutdown line? He said, okay. And then he did that too. And then he scored 35 goals. So Mangiapane has a really clear-cut role on the team, and his role hasn't really dictated how he plays. He plays basically as a second line guy with the same level of intensity and attention to detail and, grit that he did as a fourth line guy. And that might be why he's been so effective. The other thing why he's been so effective is that he plays consistently. And I think one of the reasons he plays consistently is that the expectations and the role for him are also consistent. From game 1 to game 82, what success looks like for Mangiapane is the same. Whereas Dylan Dube, I think, to use a phrase, to a certain extent has been Sam Bennetted, because sometimes he's a center, sometimes he's a winger, sometimes he's playing high in the rotation, sometimes he's playing low in the rotation. Somebody gets hurt, he's the first guy to move up into any spot in the top 9 or the top 6, which is good for him. He's got that versatility. But I think if you wonder to yourself, what's his job? What is the thing that they want Dylan Dube to do on a game-to-game basis? I think it's really difficult to define. And I think that's why, compared to some of the other guys, the young guys who come through the system the last few years, I think it's been a little bit tougher slog for him. He's shown, flashes of brilliance. We talked, I think, last week or the week before about that series against Dallas a couple of years ago in the bubble.
Oh, that beautiful goal off the wing.
He was, the Flames lost Anthony Tkachuk, and I would argue that Dylan Dube was their best or their second best forward in that series. It wasn't enough to get them a series win, but damn it, he tried his best. And I don't think we've seen that Dylan Dube nearly as consistently enough during the regular season. And that's why he's, on the depth chart that we're kicking around, he's starting off on the third line, but he's also a guy that, let's say Toffoli doesn't click on the top line right away. Let's say, Blake Coleman, they want to shuffle around. Like, if Dube has a good camp, he's a guy who can easily play all over the place and play with anybody, but he hasn't really shown it consistently enough to cement himself as one of those guys yet.
He's got one thing that the other wingers don't have to the same degree, and that's his speed. Now, they used to have Johnny, but Dube is probably their naturally fastest skating winger, and how he is going to play with a centerman is going to determine where he is in the lineup. How does that complement this? He's got 3 really great now. Yeah, we practically next Backlund right now, but he is more of he's less of a shutdown guy and more of a scorer so far, based on how his numbers play and everything, and how he's tracked, and even just how he plays. But I mean, if he could figure out how to use his speed on the back check a little more, he could be even more of a complete player, and could take maybe that next step. But right now, I think Sutter said it on the Eric Francis show. Everyone needs to be 10% better, and Dube is no exception. He's looking for a step forward from his winger. And if he's not going to make the step forward, someone else might get the opportunity. So I agree. Dube, big training camp for Dube.
Give me one of yours.
So the one that everyone else will probably mention is the one rookie that everyone's hoping might make out of camp in a prominent position. That's Jacob Pelche. As of right now, there is seemingly a hole there. The Flames have not inked Evan Rodriguez or Sonny Milano, the 2 kind of possible top 6 wingers still available. So there's a spot open, and the best winger on the Stockton Heat, which from last year, which will now be the Calgary Heat, or the Wranglers, sorry. Is Jacob Pelche. And Jacob Pelche got sent home. He's got a training regimen. He's got a full year. He knows what to expect. He's out a professional year. I'm really interested to see how much work he put in the offseason himself to get prepped. One of the things we hear all the time from the coaching staff is, are they at the right conditioning level to play right away? I'm interested in the fitness testing. I'm interested in his on-ice capabilities. He's poised to take a step of his draft class. He's one of the only first-round picks to not have played an NHL game yet. It is closing in on time for Pelche time, and I think he can do it. If they don't sign anyone, I would expect him to be there. But things can change, and we'll see how training camp plays out. But that's why it's a big training camp for Jacob Pelche. There's a spot open, and he's more than skilled enough to grab it.
Yeah, and I think for Pelche, it's just a question of, can he be this year's Shillington? Can he be the guy who sort of kicks the door down and makes it impossible to send him down? And I think the challenge for him is, he's playing, let's be honest, the Flames think they won a Stanley Cup this year. Like, let's not beat around the bush. They think they're good enough. They thought they were good enough last year. They think they're close. And so it's a tough situation to put a young kid in that, because you don't, I know this will sound kind of crazy for people, but they don't want to put a 20 or 21-year-old kid in a position to cost the Flames game and potentially cost them the Stanley Cup. So unless they think he can be a net positive contributor, it's a really stupid thing to try to teach somebody on the job on a Stanley Cup contending team, because the ramifications of failure on a contending team are much worse for both the player and the team. And you don't want to sort of damage a kid's confidence like that.
Well, just look
on the other hand, if he comes in, he seems like a type of player that Daryl Sutter could fall in love with, just with how he plays, and who's very good in the American Hockey League. Great. With that, you get a cup of coffee and a pat in the back, and they send you on your way for the summer with a training regimen. But, when I talked to Mitch Love about the prospects as part of our prospect series that just concluded. He had a lot of really nice things to say about Pelche, and, I think Pelche and a couple other guys in the system did everything they could to raise their stock this past regular season. So, I think Pelche is well positioned, but I also think, like you, I think he needs to have a hell of a camp to really force management's hand, because he's waiver exempt. So you can send him down and you don't risk losing him. Whereas some other guys, maybe they want to keep them around. So we'll see.
Just before we move on to your second guy, how the Colorado Avalanche utilized Alex Newhook is an example of a championship team and using a skilled prospector player. Newhook didn't play top end minutes. He got basically, whenever he was in the lineup, a steady dose of third line, depending on when and where when they needed him. But like that just as soon as you mentioned like the usage and the how to use them, that's the example that came to mind for me. So good leadership in the room, good veteran presence that can possibly help them along. But yeah, you definitely can't just throw them in there and expect perfection. So,
okay, my next one. This is an obvious one, and it's obvious because we've talked about him a lot. Yusuf Alamaki. He's in, he has a year left of his current deal. He's going to be a RFA after the season. He spent last season, I think he played a couple NHL games, a handful of NHL games. He began the season as, I guess, the 6'7" defenseman. I think sort of a 6. And then, when Zadorov got hurt, they moved Shillington up, and then everybody dropped down a peg. And the guy who fell out of the bottom was Yusuf Alamaki, and he did not do enough to get himself back into the top 6. And so he was sent back to the minors midseason because he was waiver exempt. The Flames started the season with 8 defensemen, and he was the 8th best guy. He was the easiest guy to send down. They didn't want to lose Michael Stone because he was league minimum and a very solid defenseman, solid number 7. I think the Flames' point was proven in the playoffs when he had to come in. And Yusuf, he was fine, I guess, in the American Hockey League. I watched a lot of AHL games last year, specifically to watch Yusuf Alamaki. He was fine, but I mean, if you look at the other guys in Stockton, Connor Mackey was consistently better. They pulled up Connor Mackey and used him as an extra defenseman in the playoffs because they felt Connor Mackey really kicked ass last year and deserved the opportunity. And I'm sure Connor Mackey learned a lot from it. Whereas Alamaki, he played a lot in the playoffs and he was pretty good in the playoffs. But, he's the kind of guy where, based on where he was drafted, based on what excited scouts in the Flames about Alamaki when he was drafted, they thought this is the kind of guy who can really be a difference maker. And unfortunately, he wasn't a consistent difference maker in the American League. And I think this is the kind of year where if he has a good camp, they can find a home for him. Maybe it's in Calgary. Maybe they make some moves and use him as a 7th. And I'm sure they love if Alamaki had an amazing camp and was the guy they thought he could be. And then they're like, oh, sweet. Okay, this guy's awesome. We'll use him as a 7. Maybe we won't use him all the time, but who cares? If you have a good 7, you're going to use a good 7. But if he's not a guy who can be a good 7 and push for spots above that, then, maybe they put up, they'd have to throw him at waivers, but maybe you look at a trade, but all the possibilities for his career in the NHL, anywhere in any organization, is dependent on him having a good camp. And, it's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who's had, let's be honest, he's had the shittiest luck as a pro. High ankle sprain mid-season his first year. He, for those of you who have short memories, Yusuf legitimately made the Flames at a camp in his first pro season. He came in and he was awesome. I mean, he wasn't Giordano or Brody good, but he was, you can make a case he was the 3rd or 4th best guy in that camp. He made the team legitimately. Everyone was, really excited to see him take that step. Mid-season, he had a high ankle injury, which if you had a high ankle sprain, you basically can't put weight on your foot, and then you have to wait for the whole thing to mend, and it's a soft tissue injury and it's a hard tissue injury sometimes at once. So you have to wait for a lot of things to heal correctly, and then you have to basically learn how to walk properly again. And then once you get your walking cadence down, then you got to try to skate again. And skating, when you haven't really skated in a long time, especially at a high level, is really tough. And then he got past all that, and he came back to the playoffs against Colorado, and the team they got the doors blown off, but he was fine. Then that offseason, he's like, okay, can I get back on track? Blew out his knee at the end of camp. Like he blew out his knee at the end of the summer. It was so late that they'd already bought out, I believe, Michael Stone. And then they had to call him up awkwardly and be like, hey, Mike, you're going to come back. We actually need a guy now. So good for Michael Stone. I mean, but to begrudge nothing, like Michael Stone is a financial decision, not like they didn't think he was a good defenseman. But he made the team at his first year in camp, and then he was gonna have to play his way off the team that second year before his knee gave out, and then he lost that whole year of development, and then all of a sudden you're heading into the 3rd year of your entry level deal, and you've only played half a season because of injuries, which is kind of shitty.
Which is terrible at 19 and 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think it's 2021, but then he has a pandemic, and as a young guy, It's hard for you to get training again because especially in a developmental year, you really need the one-on-one hands-on with time with a dev coach, a skills coach, a skating coach, especially when you're coming off those kind of lower body injuries. You need to get your strength back and your swagger back and your confidence in your game and your speed and your edges. There's so many things that have sort of gone against him the last few years. It's hard not to root for him though, because I remember how good he was for Tri-City in his draft year, in his post-draft year, how good he was for the Flames in that first camp, how good he was for the Flames when he came back and did some rehab work in Stockton that year. He has so much potential that you hope he's able to meet that potential somewhere because, it's just...
He's got great raw skills and a great hockey IQ on the offensive side of the puck, but he needs to rope in his defensive game if he's ever going to play a regular role on a Daryl Sutter team. That's you're never getting caught behind. You're always in the right position. You're between the goalie and them on the rush. Always you get caught at all. No go. Like your job is to defend. Your job as a defenseman to be the defense and not the offense. And that's a little bit, and you know what? He had a year where he had to go back to the minors. He's still making his big bucks, his $1.55 million contract. It's one way. So he's still getting paid no matter what, but yeah, nothing is given. It's all earned with Daryl Sutter, and you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to work hard and take a spot from someone that's already in the lineup.
And yeah, to steal a line from The Departed, no one's going to give it to you. You're going to have to take it. And that's how things have been with young players under Daryl Sutter. If somebody comes in and kicks the door down, they'll get an opportunity. Yusuf Alamaki could be one of them. But I would argue that time may be running out for him to sort of make an impression on this coaching staff, on this management group, because the clock's a ticking, and he's waiver eligible, and I'm sure for a guy who is as highly touted as he was, they don't want to lose him for nothing, and I think they're running the risk of losing him for nothing depending on how things go. So I don't know, we'll see how they go. As we're discussing about time running out, Shane, time is running out for the all-you-can-eat ribs at Montana's. The all-you-can-eat rib fest runs until September 12th. So you have just when you're listening to this, just under a week remaining. So get on out, go get some ribs. They're excellent. We won't, if you have a diet or something, training camp starts on the 21st for Flames veterans, on the 14th for the rookies. So whatever you need to say to yourself to make it okay to go get some ribs, go get some ribs. Montana's will still have their limited time big grill trio with his 4 bones of in-house smoked pork back ribs, a fire grilled chicken breast, both sauce to your liking, and 2 grilled shrimp skewers brushed with a garlicky Cajun sauce, along with sides and a drink. So yeah, get on down to Montana's. They're lovely people, supporters of us and our beautiful work here at the Nation Network, and they make some damn fine ribs. You're never going to go wrong with a big old plate of ribs. Just make sure, when you get #GetMontana's messy, bring some wet naps, do what you need to do to make yourself presentable. Our friend over at Oilers Nation, Bag Milk, went down to Montana's before he had a big meeting. And if you're full of meat, you're full of those sides like the cornbread and the potatoes, you might be a little bit nappy. You might have a little bit of sleep and need to fight the sleep a bit. So just try not to have anything important to do right after you go to Montana's. Go to Montana's and then get on the couch and play some video games, have a nap, do whatever you need to do, whatever your process is. Find the process is right for you. But again, all you can eat Rib Fest runs until September 12th at your nearest Montana's location. They're very nice people. Nope. Tell them we sent you. Tell them we say hi.
You know who's definitely going to need that break between when the ribs and training camp is Adam Ruzicka. He's got to find a contract someone there too, but he's my second guy to have a big camp. He is their prototypical, if something were to happen to one of their centermen, he's right there. He's in the wings. He's going to require waivers if he goes down this year. So, you got to hope he makes the camp. He played 33 games last year, I believe.
I think it was 26.
26. He's got, or is 33 overall, I think, over the last couple of years. He's somewhere in 30 some games, but he's got a nose for the net that a guy that you dream guys his size have. Now he's got to get his mobility and he's got to get his positioning right, but he had pretty much a full half a season with the big club last year, getting direction from the guy that you want to give him direction to. He's a coach's dream if he can figure it out. I'm hoping. I don't know if he makes it as a center right away. Like if he can transition his game into the wing and make himself more versatile, there's more of likely playing time and roster spots for him. If he just keeps it one dimensional at center, he's going to have to, and I'm knock on wood, because I hope it doesn't happen to the three guys, hope for an injury. I did suggest in a previous podcast, he could take reps in the fourth line center role occasionally, just to make sure he's still skating. But ideally, this is a player you don't want playing on the fourth line role, because they do play they do have a different job than the other lines. You want him on a scoring role with some complementary players that are going to allow him. He's got great hands in tight.
I'm going to disagree somewhat with that. I'll disagree somewhat with that. Just the idea that you mentioned the Daryl Sutter style, referring to a previous player. I think Ruzicka is found money in the offensive zone. He's so good in the offensive zone. I still think they think he's a work in progress defensively. And if anything, the fourth line is sort of the play responsible hockey in your own zone, get it out, and then just chip, chase, and check. That's what they want the guys to do. So I would argue that maybe you want to put him on that fourth line to start, because the Flames have typically done with some of these younger guys where they start you out. Case in point, you brought up Mangiapane when we were talking about Dylan Dube. With Mangiapane, when he was playing with Hathaway and Derek Ryan, were buried in the defensive zone. And the instruction from Bill Peters was, "Cool, win the faceoffs, get the hell out of there." And that was their role. They were able to do it. But it made that role, I think, made Mangiapane he was already pretty good, but I think it really helped him home his attention to detail in his own zone, because first couple of months of doing that, he would make some mistakes and they'd be scrambling. After the first couple of months, he figured it out. It made Hathaway better. I even argue that role made Derek Ryan better at times, because he was able to sort of rely on his teammates a bit more. So
all three of them statistically since then have been fantastic defensive players as well. So
yeah,
but good. That's like, I get what you're saying. Either one of those three would not be I get what you're saying. What's the opposite of a beneficiary? Whatever that is.
Hindrance.
The opposite of that word. It's a compliment to him and possibly developing his game. So I agree in the sense that he could, I'm not against using the Ruzicka on the fourth line. He's got more speed than those other guys, and drive, like I said, to play has been up the middle. So having a 6'4" center on the ice at any time is always a positive. And that's why Adam Ruzicka is my second player to watch in camp.
Hello.
Pardon the technical difficulty. He is in California, so
hotel Wi-Fi, folks.
Happen from time to time.
Hotel Wi-Fi. Well, we'll see if Princey can stitch this together in some sort of a coherent way. So yeah,
We'll trust him.
Shane's second player with an important camp is Adam Ruzicka. My third guy, and this might surprise some people, is Dustin Wolf. So here's the thing. So Dan Vladar is in the second year, or actually his third year of his current contract. Upon its expiry, he becomes a restricted free agent. Dan Vladar is on a league minimum contract. Dan Vladar will never be cheaper and more of a bargain than he is right now, which means Dan Vladar, if the Flames have a replacement for him, is a prime contender to be flipped for an asset. There are plenty of teams who would probably be willing to give up a, let's say, second round pick. Maybe just a third. Maybe the Flames settle for a third. But I think they'd probably be hoping for a second-round pick to recoup the third-round pick they spent on him. And Dan Vladar could go and probably be maybe not a starter in any other market, but a solid 40-game, 35 to 40-game goalie.
Like a Capo Kakinen, James Reimer split level kind of role.
There are plenty of teams that don't have two NHL goaltenders they trust. And I'm pretty sure if Dan Vladar continues being the way he was last season, there will be plenty of teams calling the Flames, being like, "What's it going to cost to get Dan Vladar from you?" Because the Flames cap situation is tight, and Dan Vladar will probably be making on a new contract, let's say north of $1 million. And if you can save a few $100,000 without really having a drop off, you might entertain that. Where that's important at is Dustin Wolf, because Dustin Wolf, the reigning American Hockey League goaltender of the year, and someone who's been the goaltender of the year in the league he's played in for each of the last 3 seasons. He's a damn fine goalie. He was real good for them in the playoffs in Stockton. He was real good for them in the regular season in Stockton. He was so good that Daryl Sutter, the Flames, we talked previously about how Daryl Sutter, his reputation is he doesn't want to bring up a lot of young kids. And I think it depends on the kid, because Dustin Wolf got brought up twice to be the backup in short-term situations, but the line that was given to us was he's the best goalie down there. He's the number 3 goalie in the system, easily number 3 goalie in the system as a 20-year-old, now a 21-year-old. And the thought process was he's the next guy up, so why not use him? For Dustin, I think the big question right now is what is the gap between him and Dan Vladar? Because if the gap ain't very much, I think you start early on thinking about a post Vladar future and also about Dustin Wolf's NHL bona fides, because I think you have to look at it. And I think if you're Wolf, plenty of goalies have had a good first AHL season and then sort of tailed off a bit. Because it's easy to be like, yeah, I had a great season, and then you go, okay, you get comfortable. And I think the challenge for them is, and I think the reason why they brought in Oscar Dansk as his backup, Oscar Dansk was Dustin Wolf in a lot of different NHL markets. In his NHL career, he's been a guy who's sort of been almost at the precipice of breaking through as a regular. Couldn't quite work it out. He played in the KHL. He's played in the minors. He's a veteran pro, and I think his job is to make sure that Wolf is a little bit uncomfortable all the time, so that Wolf finds that next level. Because if Wolf can go from being a very good, I don't think it's unfair to say very good AHL goalie. If he can be a consistently very good goalie,
you could use the word great.
He's borderline great. So how do you get him great?
Yeah.
If he's great, he's not going to be in the AHL much longer. And I think that'd be what the Flames want. The Flames don't want him to be in the AHL any longer than he needs to be. And I think the witching hour is almost upon us for seeing if Dustin Wolf can be a consistent NHLer. So Dustin Wolf is my third guy.
That fascinates me because franchises have forever wanted to bring goalies along slowly. Right? Like they like to give them lots of time to marinate and get down to the nitty gritty. But I'm like, also, they need to know what's going to happen. Like what level do they need to test the NHL at some point, so they know exactly what they're getting their butts into. They need to know what level they need to work towards when they're down there. And I'm going to be honest, the preseason can only show you so much. Like you're going to need to eventually see some NHL action, so you know what level you need to get your game to. I'm not worried about Dustin Wolf working his way there. 3 years in a row, best goaltender in his league. No, he's personally, I don't know what the gap between the goalies are, because I borrow from Daryl all the time. I know big saves and bad goals, but Dustin Wolf has a lot of big saves and not very many bad goals. So that just puts him very high in my books. And one of the best goaltending prospects they've drafted based on success in the minor leagues in years. They haven't worked previously, so fingers crossed is what it comes with me with Wolf. I'm just hoping. My third guy is finally not a young guy. It's an older guy. It's Nazim Qadri, his first season in Calgary, and it's more or less because I want to know where he slots. Is he going to be in a tandem with Lindholm? Is he getting the offensive starts? Is he getting the defensive starts? Are they going to just strictly give them to Backlund? How's it going to work with the other centers? We know Lindholm is their prolific number one, and we know Backlund is their shutdown guy. I'm interested to see how Qadri comes in and which wingers work well with him. Daryl was on the Eric Francis show on Sportsnet 960 from the farm, may I add. Hilarious interview. You could hear him working in the background. It was fantastic. And he said specifically, he was asked about Mangiapane, and he said who he's going to play with, and he goes, well, that doesn't matter. The wingers will play with, it depends on who works well with the centers. He says it's about the centers. He says, I don't care about where Mangiapane plays. It's about who does he work best with in the lineup. So that's why Nazim Qadri is my player to pick, because I want to see which wingers end up complementing him and how the top nine that'll determine how the top nine shapes out. He's the new guy. He's the guy that you want to experiment with the most, get the best feel for. You've had Lindholm, you've had Backlund, you've had most of your wingers other than Huberdeau. It's how Qadri works with those guys, and that's why I think it's a big camp. And Flames fans should take a note of Qadri and who's playing with him at any given time.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Shane. I don't think there's a lot more to add to that. So, and with that, at the risk of running afoul of hotel Wi-Fi again, we might as well close it out. Once again, FlamesNation Radio is brought to you by DoorDash and Eau Claire Distilleries, the makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames, and also presented by our friends at Montana's. So for Shane, I'm Ryan. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next week, and at this time next week, we'll be talking about the Young Stars Classic, and potentially I believe we'll have rosters in hand. So we'll break down who's there, who's not there. And most importantly, as all you folks know, who are the tryout players? Who are the uncontracted players, the new faces who will be trying to make an impression on Flames brass? So we'll see that in a week. In the meantime, everybody stay cool, stay hydrated, and stay out of trouble. Once again, for Shane, I'm Ryan. See you next week.